into today some
Absolutely,
very interesting stories. But we begin with this today, where President Bola Tinubu has submitted the names of 2 nominees to the Senate for confirmation as chief executive officers of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. Now, in a statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Ononuga, the President explained that the nominations follow the resignation of Engineer Bola Ahmed, the former Chief Executive of the NMDPRA, and Gbenga Komolafe, the former Chief Executive of the NUPRC. Now, the 2 former officials were appointed in 2021 by former President Muhammadu Buhari, and the agencies were established under the Petroleum Industry Act. Very interesting. I truly believe, Mr. Shomi, that this is a reset moment for Nigeria's oil regulation. We saw yesterday, or day before yesterday, that Aliko Dangote came out and said, look, this is very serious. There's some serious allegations brought up against Engineer Bola Ahmed. Then yesterday we heard that he had a closed-door meeting with the president. Now there's been new appointees. What do you make of this? Because I know that sometimes you find yourself in those cabals, so you need to give us the inside scoop on what you think happened.
Yeah, I think this is very impressive. Quite often people in authority, particularly at the federal level, tend to ignore public concerns about issues, but this is not about the guilty or innocence of any of the 2 officers who have been relieved of their jobs, but the fact that the federal government has been able to respond to the expectations of Nigerians and the international community to say, look, there are serious issues here being raised by a fellow Nigerian and a very reputable businessman. Why don't you look at the issues? So we don't have to wait for the Americans to say, oh, yeah, we think you are guilty of corruption, you are promoting corruption. We dealt with the issue straight away. The federal government has acted correctly. Step aside, let the process take care of itself. For instance, the FCC is involved in it. The Dangote road to ICPC. So there's no point allowing them to continue in office. And I think the president acted very swiftly to address the issues. But behind the old issues, one issue would always remain in contention, the issue of importation of petrol and Dangote's position on it. Yes, he has invested a huge amount of money in that industry. And like anybody, he would want his investment protected. But the other side of it is the PIA. We need to look at the PIA. What the NMDPRA is doing is actually implementing the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act, because the Act prescribes competition. But in the meantime, before we get the refineries functioning, how do you ensure there's competition? I think that's the core of the issue, at stake. And I'm sure the House of Reps would actually look into that.
Most definitely.
Absolutely, Ibrahim. This isn't just a change of personnel. It could really shape policy going forward in terms of oil regulation in Nigeria. Like Mr. Biodun rightly said, the president acted very swiftly. This is a very high-level gap that we don't want to happen. We need people that are putting proper regulation in place. Do you think this signals a new era?
Well, of course, certainly. By the time you get new person coming into office, you know that they will come with their own new policy and do everything to interpret, to translate whatever the president has at the back of his mind as his renewed hope agenda. Because one thing is the oil sector has been deregulated, and we want bigger players, we want people to be able to play fairly, within that industry. But some disagree with Dangote, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, he's fighting dirty because of his own business, because of his own interest in the oil sector. And others are saying, why is it that all the information you have or you had about this man, why is it that we are now getting to hear about it when you feel like your own business, was being threatened? Why didn't you tell us about it long time ago? Is that to say that, all the juggernauts, they have all the information about themselves, but they won't say it for as long as it doesn't affect them? This should not be the spirit. Others also disagreed with Alhaji Aliko Dangote that he himself has that monopolistic tendencies. He has also played dirty, back in the day and all of that. Now he got some people who are higher than him, and then that's the reason he's fighting dirty. So all in all, yesterday when we spoke with Marin Dotti, it was saying that Mr. President should tread carefully, not to support one as against the other, because this might likely affect the investors or maybe weaken investors' confidence who are looking to come into the country and to invest in the Nigerian economy. But in all, the man has resigned, which is the honorable thing to do, 2 of them. they've been replaced, but they should also go ahead, proceed with investigation, on allegations that he paid $5 million, for his children's tuition. Or another paper was also reporting 7 million naira. Whatever it is, whoever is holding any public office must be accountable and must be held accountable because he or she is not there to make money.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting. Now, Mr. Bionishomi, these were not small allegations that were brought against Engineer Farouk Ahmed. We're talking gross misconduct and corruption allegations. He came out, put out a statement. He said, I've worked in the service for several years, almost 3 decades. Yeah. This money has accumulated. My father was also a very wealthy man. This is where the money is coming from for this tuition for my children. And also, my children got merit-based scholarships that account for over 60% of their tuition fees. However, we've seen this several times, and this might be a bit controversial for me to say, but people are involved in public scandal and then suddenly they tender their own resignation, seemingly willingly.
No, some are actually being forced to
yes. No, look, what the government has done, we tend not to appreciate the importance of the decision for those two guys to step aside, particularly Farouk Ahmed. Look, we are at a period when we want to grow our oil exports. We want to produce more crude. There is no opportunity in the downstream sector any longer. The main opportunity is in the upstream. And to get the upstream running, you need investors. And these are investors who would have to get the money from international finance market. And that's the focus of the country. That is the only way we can hit 2 million, 2.5 and 3 million barrels a day. If you have a regulator, under suspicion or facing allegations of this, whether right or wrong, I'm not saying he's guilty or any one of them is guilty of anything. No. The fact of the matter is it will affect investors' confidence in that sector. And that is why I think the federal government acted very swiftly to make sure that this issue is addressed so that it does not affect investment in the upstream sector without pronouncing any guilt or otherwise on anybody or innocence. So the system will take care of itself. The institutions, ICPC and EFCC, will be left to do their job. If eventually it's found innocent, we've had this case before. You remember the case of the former Minister for Health, Professor Adenike Grange, who was accused over 5 million naira, trip to Ghana. I think you will remember that case. Eventually, she resigned. She stepped aside, as Minister for Health, but eventually she was found innocent, even by the courts. Absolutely. So, that restored our integrity. So for me, with Farouk, it doesn't mean that Dangote has proven his case. That will be done in court, if indeed it gets to court. But the fact of the matter is, it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely. We can go on all day about this. Thank you so much, team, for your input. Hopefully this will be a new era for Nigeria's oil sector. We look forward, we're watching very closely, and we remain with renewed hope. Now, President Bola Tinubu is expected to present the 2026 appropriation bill to a joint session of the National Assembly on Friday, December 19th, 2025. President Tinubu will present the proposed 2026 budget at 2 p.m. this Friday. It also details security and access arrangements directing all accredited persons to be at their duty posts by 11 a.m., after which access to the National Assembly complex will be restricted. Non-accredited persons were advised to stay away from the complex. And staff members except the clerk, the deputy clerk, the clerk of the House, the clerk of the Senate, and their deputies were instructed to park their vehicles at designated areas at the annex or the new car park by the National Assembly Service Gate. The annual budget presentation formally transmits the federal government's fiscal proposals to the legislature for consideration and